Welcome. Tonight we take a calming journey through the fascinating story of the Roman Empire. Before we start, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy these relaxing videos, but only do so if you genuinely enjoy this type of content. Also, let me know in the comments what time it is and where you are located in the world. I always find it interesting hearing where my listeners are from. Now, turn off your lights and maybe turn on your fan for that relaxing background humming sound. Get comfortable as we unfold the layers of the Roman Empire. We begin long ago when the land of Italy held a deep and important history. The Tiber River flowed calmly like a silver ribbon through green fields, its waters quietly making their way to the sea. On its eastern side, gently rising from the ground, stood 7 hills. These weren't huge mountains but soft, rolling bumps of land. Each one offered a good spot, a natural safe place. These hills, sometimes covered in morning mist or bathed in warm sunlight, became the special home for a city unlike any other. Here, under old trees that had seen many seasons, with the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant, peaceful sounds of nature, the first seeds of Rome were planted. It was a truly beautiful place where time seemed to slow down and the very earth felt ancient. Like many great civilizations, Rome's earliest story is full of old tales and legends. These stories gave people a comforting sense of purpose and made them feel connected to something much bigger than themselves. One such tale tells of twin brothers Romulus and Remus. Their story began with a twist of fate. They were left by the river as babies, but incredibly, a she-wolf found them and cared for them, nursing them like her own. Later, a kind shepherd found them and raised them simply, with a strong connection to the land. This isn't a story of harsh struggles, but of a surprising survival, a quiet sign of never giving up, and of destiny guiding their path. These brothers were meant to build a great city, but they argued about where exactly it should be. In a sad moment, Romulus eventually founded the city and named it Rome after himself. Even with this beginning, there was a feeling of a larger plan coming together. The city was born not just from human wishes, but from a deeper, almost fated connection to its roots. Beyond Romulus and Remus, another key story tells of Aeneas, a prince from the city of Troy. After his city fell, he went on a long, hard, but destined journey across the sea. When he finally arrived in Italy after many challenges, it was a very important moment. He was a symbol of strength and dedication, carrying the good qualities of his people, and the fate to start a new family line that would lead to Rome's founders. These stories were told for many generations. They gave the early Romans a strong sense of who they were and their special purpose. They believed they were chosen by fate, linked to old heroes in the very land they lived on. These were comforting stories that brought a quiet strength and a clear idea of what they were meant to be. For a time, Rome was ruled by kings. But Romans eventually preferred a different way to govern. They wanted a system that shared power and responsibility among everyone. This wasn't a sudden big change, but a slow, natural shift, like a gentle tide coming in. The kings slowly faded away, and a new way of government, called the Republic, began. In this new system, power wasn't held by just one person. Instead, it was spread out among different groups of citizens. This idea of shared rule, where decisions were made by talking things over and agreeing, rather than by one person's command, was a bedrock of early Roman life. It made everyone feel like they owned a part of their community, and that looking after everyone's well-being was most important. The heart of early Roman society was built on strong values: being careful with money, doing one's duty, called pietas, being disciplined, living simply, and being able to take care of oneself. These weren't just big ideas. They were how they lived every single day. The life of an early Roman who was both a farmer and a soldier began with the quiet sounds of the farm waking up. The gentle bleating of sheep far away, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, the quiet clatter of simple farm tools. He would work his small patch of land, planting seeds and looking after his crops. His hands would be tough but strong. It was a life of quiet hard work, where everything he did helped feed his family and his community. Duty, or pietas as the Romans called it, meant being loyal not just to family but also to their state. When the call came to join the army, these farmers would turn into disciplined soldiers, defending their homes and their way of life. Then, when the danger passed, they would return to their fields. Their lives were deeply tied to the land. They lived simply, honorably, and were strongly rooted in hard work and responsibility. This calm, steady way of life, marked by simplicity and a deep connection to the earth, built a strong foundation for everything that would happen next. Early Roman power didn't grow through sudden, wide attacks. Instead, it was a slow, natural spread, much like a tree gently growing its roots deeper into good soil. This growth came from alliances, agreements, and welcoming neighboring tribes into their group. Rome understood that working together was smart. They formed groups like the Latin League, making strong ties with nearby towns. Often, instead of just taking over, Rome offered something very meaningful: the chance to become a citizen or to share rights. This was a powerful reason for different peoples to join the Roman way, creating a feeling of shared future and purpose. It was a calm, unhurried growth, shaped by clever talking and patiently building relationships, gaining strength through working together rather than just by fighting. To manage this growing community and its spreading influence, the early republic created important guiding groups. These were made to keep things steady and help them grow carefully. At its core was the Senate, a group of older, wise leaders who were highly respected. Their job was to give advice, guide things, and keep a steady hand on the affairs of the state. Along with the Senate were different assemblies, where citizens could gather to talk about important matters and choose their magistrates. These officials would look after different parts of public life, from fairness in law to money matters. This system, with its ways of checking power and balancing it, was carefully designed to make sure power was shared and that decisions were made with much thought. It showed how smart they were, building a framework that would allow their society to grow, change, and last for many centuries. The soft sounds of early Roman life filled the air. The far-off, comforting bleating of sheep on a hillside, the gentle rustle of leaves as a soft breeze moved through an old grove of trees, the quiet, steady splash of the Tiber River as it slowly made its way to the sea, the subtle creak of simple wooden tools as a farmer worked his land, and the soft murmur of voices in a peaceful village were common sounds. These were the gentle harmonies of a young civilization, a people deeply connected to their land, living lives full of purpose and simplicity. This steady, measured development, rooted in strong values and a profound connection to the land, laid a firm and unshakable base for all that came after. From these quiet beginnings, a vast civilization would slowly, carefully unfold. As Rome grew stronger, its gaze would soon extend beyond its immediate neighbors, looking towards the great waters that surrounded the Italian peninsula. The stage was set for a new kind of expansion, one that would bring them into contact with powerful rivals and truly shape them into masters of the Mediterranean. As Rome grew, slowly but surely, its focus began to spread beyond the gentle hills and fertile lands of central Italy. Like a quiet ripple expanding on a calm pond, Rome's reach extended outwards, eventually touching the vast, sparkling expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. This wasn't a sudden burst of ambition, but a natural progression for a people whose strength was steadily increasing, and whose needs for resources and connections were also growing. The small, landlocked city-state had matured into a regional power, and its eyes naturally turned toward the watery horizons. The Mediterranean itself was a world of its own. It was a deep, calm blue stretching far and wide, reflecting the endless sky. This sea wasn't just water. It was the vibrant, beating heart of the ancient world. Islands dotted its surface like green jewels, appearing as natural stepping stones between continents. The coastlines, rich and varied, were alive with bustling towns, ancient ports, and thriving communities. This great sea connected many different cultures, acting as a natural highway for trade, for people, and for new ideas to travel and mix. Its shores held immense wealth, harvested from fertile lands and rich fishing grounds, and gained through the constant flow of goods. Controlling its waters meant great power, allowing a civilization to shape the flow of goods, knowledge, and influence across the known world. It was a beautiful, inviting place, yet also a vital strategic region that now drew Rome's careful attention. With Rome's growing strength, it was perhaps natural, almost inevitable, that it would eventually meet another powerful force. This was Carthage, a mighty city located across the sea, on the northern coast of Africa, near where the modern country of Tunisia is today. Carthage was not a monstrous enemy. Instead, it was a highly skilled and incredibly wealthy trading empire. For centuries before Rome truly emerged, Carthage had built its own huge network of trade routes, reaching far and wide across the Mediterranean and beyond. Its powerful navy protected vast shipping lanes, carrying precious metals, exotic goods, and valuable resources. Carthaginian ships sailed to every corner of the Mediterranean, bringing back riches and spreading their own distinct culture. Their impressive harbors were always busy, filled with merchant ships and warships alike, showing their strength and their ability to control the sea. The rivalry between Rome and Carthage was almost bound to happen. It was a natural clash between two rising powers, both aiming to control the vital sea lanes that were the very lifelines of the ancient world. Their competition for control over the Mediterranean, particularly the rich island of Sicily, was a key part of their story, setting the stage for a grand struggle. The great conflicts that followed are known as the Punic Wars. These weren't just messy, chaotic battles. Instead, they were grand, strategic chess matches played out on the vast board of the Mediterranean. Grand navy movements took place, with hundreds of ships sailing across vast distances, each one carefully positioned to gain an advantage over the enemy. There was also the huge challenge of sending and supplying armies far from home, across wide lands, rough terrain, and even vast mountain ranges. Both sides used clever plans and smart thinking. For example, Rome, which was not originally a great sea power, quickly learned to fight on the water. They looked at Carthaginian ships, copied their designs, and even invented a new boarding ramp called the corvus that allowed their soldiers to fight on enemy ships as if they were on land. This clever adaptation helped them win crucial naval battles. And figures like Hannibal of Carthage, a truly brilliant general, led his armies on some of the most daring and difficult marches in history. He famously crossed the mighty Alps mountains with his army, including war elephants, surprising Rome by attacking from the north. These were not just simple fights, but complex tests of intelligence, careful planning, and strategic foresight on a grand scale, showing the remarkable abilities of both sides. The scale of these wars was truly immense, involving hundreds of thousands of soldiers and sailors over many decades, changing the landscape of power in the ancient world. Throughout these long and difficult conflicts, the Roman spirit showed amazing strength. They faced many setbacks, some truly devastating, but their resilience, perseverance, and unwavering determination shone through time and again. There were times when their fleets were almost entirely destroyed by storms or enemy action, or their armies suffered immense losses, leaving the future of Rome uncertain. Yet time and again they quietly endured. After a defeat, they would immediately begin rebuilding their ships, cutting down forests to craft new vessels. They would train new soldiers, sometimes very young ones, with unwavering discipline, transforming them into strong legions. And they kept their firm promise to win no matter how hard things became. This quiet endurance, this steadfast commitment to their goals, was a defining part of their character during these trying times. It was a belief that Rome would always find a way to overcome, a deep-seated confidence in their collective will, even when individual battles were lost. This patient, unwavering spirit was crucial to their eventual triumph. Two figures stand out in these great struggles, representing the strategic brilliance and unwavering resolve of both sides. Hannibal, the Carthaginian general, was incredibly brilliant. He mastered tactics, surprising his enemies with daring movements and clever ambushes. His march over the Alps with his army, including war elephants, was a feat of daring and military planning that still amazes historians today. He brought Rome to its knees in battles like Cannae, inflicting staggering losses. Yet, despite his genius, his efforts were ultimately stopped by Roman steadfastness, their endless ability to raise new armies, and their refusal to give up. On the Roman side, Scipio Africanus emerged as a calm, decisive leader. He understood Hannibal's strategies better than anyone. Instead of facing Hannibal directly in Italy, Scipio decided to take the fight to Carthage itself, forcing Hannibal to return home to defend his own city. This bold move, executed with calm determination, secured Rome's ultimate victory at the Battle of Zama. These were leaders of remarkable skill, whose brilliant decisions and quiet resolve shaped the course of history for centuries to come. The Punic Wars were long and incredibly costly for both sides, but they changed Rome forever. When they ended, the Mediterranean Sea was largely, if not entirely, under Roman influence. This process brought a new, though hard-won, sense of calm and order to the seas. Peaceful Roman trade ships now sailed freely across the vast blue, their distinctive sails visible on the horizon. These ships carried goods and ideas, connecting distant lands and peoples. Stable sea routes were firmly established, allowing goods to flow smoothly and safely between different regions, fostering prosperity across a wide area. The conflicts had been immense, creating great upheaval, but the result was a new kind of peace across the waters, a quiet order that allowed trade and travel to flourish like never before. This control of the sea lanes opened up new worlds for Rome, both literally and figuratively. These wars profoundly reshaped Rome's identity. They made Rome not just a land power focused on Italy, but a true naval and imperial force. Romans now looked beyond their Italian homeland, understanding that their future and their destiny lay in controlling the vast seas and the distant lands connected by them. Their worldview expanded dramatically. They began to see themselves as the dominant power, responsible for bringing order and stability to a much larger world. This was a critical step in their journey, pushing them into a new era of even greater influence, laying the foundation for an empire that would span continents. The quiet, steady growth of the early republic had given way to a bold new chapter, where Rome was truly becoming a master of its world. With the Punic Wars behind them, Rome had become the unchallenged master of the Mediterranean. Its ships sailed freely, its trade routes flourished, and wealth poured into the city. But this vast success, while bringing great power, also brought new challenges within Rome itself. The Republic, which had worked so well for a smaller city-state, now had to manage an immense empire. This wasn't a sudden fall into chaos, but more like the natural growing pains of a society becoming much larger and more complex, needing to adapt and stretch to fit its new reality. One of the biggest issues was a growing gap between the very rich and the ordinary people. Many Roman farmers who had bravely served in the long wars returned home to find their small farms ruined or neglected. Often they had no money to rebuild or buy new seeds. Meanwhile, wealthy Romans were buying up huge areas of land, sometimes entire villages, to create vast estates. These large farms often used enslaved people, captured during Rome's many wars, to work them. This meant that the small, independent farmers, who had been the backbone of the Republic and its army for generations, were being pushed out. They couldn't compete with the massive, cheap labor of the large estates. So they drifted into Rome looking for work and a way to live, creating a growing crowd of people with little land or money, often dependent on handouts. This shift caused a quiet tension, a sense of unease bubbling beneath the surface of Rome's newfound grandeur. It was a complex problem, deeply rooted in the very structure of their society, and it required careful thought and new solutions, but finding agreement was proving very difficult. In this time of change, two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, stepped forward. They saw these social problems clearly and believed that Rome needed to act to help its struggling citizens. They weren't trying to cause trouble. They were trying to fix things to bring back a sense of fairness and balance. Their idea was to bring back old laws that limited how much public land one person could own, and then to divide that land and give it back to the poor farmers. They wanted to ensure that enough Romans had land to be independent, pay taxes, and serve in the army. These efforts were sincere, honest attempts to address the growing imbalance in Roman society. They wanted to make sure that the Republic continued to be strong, built on the well-being and stability of all its citizens, not just the wealthy elite. However, their reforms were seen as a direct threat by the wealthy and powerful, who held much influence in the Senate and benefited from the current system. The ideas of the Gracchi, while aiming for fairness, led to fierce arguments in the public squares and, sadly, even violence, showing how difficult it was to change things in a rapidly changing world. Their story highlights that even good intentions can have unexpected and difficult consequences when a society is trying to find its new balance and powerful groups resist change. As these internal struggles continued, another major change was happening within the Roman army. For a long time, the army was made up of ordinary citizens who were also farmers. They served for a short time when needed and then went back to their homes and fields. But with longer wars and campaigns far from Italy, in places like Spain, Greece, and North Africa, this system became difficult to manage. Farmers couldn't leave their land for years on end. This led to a crucial shift in the rise of powerful generals like Gaius Marius and later, Lucius Cornelius Sulla. These men began to change the army in a profound way. They started recruiting professional soldiers who served for many years and were loyal to their commander, not just to Rome itself or its abstract ideals. This was a huge shift. Soldiers now looked directly to their general for their pay, for their share of war spoils, and crucially for land and security after their long years of service. This made generals incredibly powerful, allowing them to gather vast armies loyal to them personally. Their ambition was not just about winning wars for Rome, it was about shaping the political landscape. They used their armies to gain influence, leading to moments of great tension, rivalry, and even devastating civil conflict within Rome itself. This was a natural reflection of how the Roman state was evolving, from a city-state run by citizens to a vast republic increasingly overseen by highly influential military leaders whose personal power rivaled that of the state itself. The Roman world was becoming much more complex on many levels. The constant wars and conquests brought in huge numbers of enslaved people from conquered lands. These enslaved people often worked on the large estates owned by the wealthy, making those estates even more profitable and further pushing out the smaller, independent farmers. This change in farming practices meant that grain, olives, and other goods were now produced on a massive scale, altering the very economy of Italy and causing new social divides. At the same time, Rome was bringing in people from many different lands into its growing empire, sometimes as new citizens, sometimes as allies, sometimes as captives. This mix of new populations, new ideas, new ways of life, and new wealth added layers of complexity to Roman society that the old republican system, designed for a smaller, simpler state, struggled deeply to handle. The traditions and institutions that had once guided Rome were now being stretched and tested in new ways, like an old garment trying to fit a much larger body. But it wasn't all struggle and tension. Rome's cultural life also expanded and became more refined during this period. The wealthy built grander villas in the countryside, elegant homes with beautiful gardens, intricate mosaic floors, and elaborate wall decorations. Roman cuisine became more sophisticated, with new foods, spices, and cooking styles introduced from across their vast territories. And perhaps most importantly, Roman law continued to develop into a truly sophisticated system of justice. It wasn't just about simple rules, it was about carefully thought-out principles of fairness, property rights, legal agreements, and governing relationships between individuals and between states. Roman law became a powerful tool for maintaining order and managing conflicts across their diverse empire, and its principles continue to influence legal systems around the world even today. This showed how Roman culture could absorb new ideas and wealth, adapting and growing into something richer and more complex. proving its ability to innovate even amidst internal pressures. This period also saw a boom in architectural grandeur. As Rome's wealth grew, so did its ambition to build on a larger scale, reflecting its new dominance. New public works began to appear across the city and throughout the provinces. Magnificent temples were constructed, dedicated to their gods, rising high above the city streets with impressive columns and intricate carvings. Grand triumphal arches celebrated military victories, standing as silent, majestic testaments to Rome's power and lasting achievements. Public spaces, forums, and even private homes grew larger and more elaborate, reflecting a society with greatly increased resources and a profound sense of its own importance and place in the world. These buildings weren't just functional, they were powerful statements of Roman engineering, artistry, and a deep appreciation for enduring structures. The very landscape of Rome and its growing territories was being transformed, reflecting its internal changes and its external conquests. All these changes, the social unrest, the growing power of ambitious generals, the new professional armies, and the increasing complexities of governing a vast empire, were leading Rome towards a tipping point. And at the heart of this unfolding transformation was a pivotal figure, Julius Caesar. He was a man of immense ambition, military genius, and sharp political skills, whose actions would ultimately lead to a new era for Rome. His rise to power was like an unstoppable historical force, calmly but decisively pushing the Republic towards its eventual change into an empire. He didn't just win battles, he mastered politics, skillfully navigating the choppy waters of Roman power and the fierce rivalries of the Senate. His military campaigns in Gaul, for example, were legendary, not only for their scale but for his brilliant strategy and his ability to inspire intense loyalty from his soldiers. Through these conquests, he acquired immense wealth and an army devoted to him personally. His decision to return to Rome with a powerful army, his crossing of the Rubicon River, was a moment that clearly signaled the end of the old ways of the Republic. It was a calm, decisive step into the unknown, leading directly towards the eventual transformation of the Republic into an empire. These profound changes, while significant and sometimes turbulent, were not the end of Rome. Rather, they were part of a continuous process of evolution and adaptation. The old forms of governance were being stretched and reshaped by the sheer size and complexity of the Roman world they now commanded. The Republic, designed for a city, was now straining to govern an empire. This period, with all its challenges, its strong personalities, and its internal struggles, was setting the stage for a new form of governance, one that would bring a different kind of order and stability to the vast Roman domain. The echoes of change were growing louder, preparing the world for the dawn of a new centralized era of Roman power. The turbulent years of the late Republic, with their exhausting civil wars and the constant clashes of powerful generals, slowly gave way to a profound period of calm. For what felt like an eternity, Rome had been torn by internal strife, brother fighting brother, and the very foundation of the Republic seemed to crumble under the weight of ambition. After decades of this weary conflict, the Roman people yearned deeply for stability, a quiet strength to guide them, and from this universal desire emerged a new form of leadership, bringing an unprecedented era of peace. This was not a sudden violent overthrow of the old ways, but a gradual unfolding of order, a careful and deliberate response to the widespread exhaustion and the deep longing for peace that followed so much strife. The stage was thus perfectly set for the arrival of a truly transformative figure, who would gently yet firmly usher in Rome's golden age. At the heart of this great shift was Augustus, a man who would become Rome's first emperor. His reign marked a crucial turning point, smoothly guiding Rome from its republican past into its new imperial future. Augustus was a remarkably skilled statesman, incredibly careful and deliberate in how he brought about this immense change. He understood the deep Roman love for the Republic and its cherished traditions. He knew that simply seizing power would lead to more chaos. So, instead of declaring himself king or dictator for life, He subtly consolidated power by taking on various titles that gave him immense authority, but always within the existing framework of the state. He was princeps, the first citizen, and held titles like imperator, commander, and pontifex maximus, chief priest. He presented himself not as a tyrannical ruler, but as the one who had lovingly restored order, rebuilt the shattered state, and brought back traditional Roman values like discipline, piety, and simplicity. He carefully managed appearances, always respectful of the Senate, even as he gradually gained ultimate control over the army, the provinces, and the state's finances. His quiet yet firm leadership brought an unprecedented era of stability and widespread prosperity, a true testament to his political genius, his deep understanding of the Roman spirit, and his incredible foresight in establishing a lasting system of governance. He reorganized the army, settling loyal veterans on land, and set up a highly efficient system for governing the provinces, replacing greedy governors with honest administrators. These foundational reforms, often carried out quietly and behind the scenes, laid the enduring groundwork for centuries of imperial rule. The most famous legacy of Augustus's reign, and indeed one of the most remarkable periods in all of human history, was the establishment of the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace. This was not merely the absence of war, it was a profound, widespread sense of internal calm, a secure network of borders, and a flourishing of trade that remarkably lasted for over 2 centuries. For generation after generation, people across the vast Roman Empire experienced daily life largely free from major conflicts or sudden invasions. The benefits were tangible and profound for everyone, from the bustling cities of Italy to the remote outposts on the frontiers. Travel became safe across the empire's vast network of roads, allowing merchants, scholars, travelers, and officials to move freely and securely from Britannia in the north to Egypt in the south, without fear of banditry or sudden local wars. Communities could settle and grow without constant threats, building their lives with confidence and investing in their future. Farmlands thrived, producing abundant harvests, cities expanded, filled with new public works and amenities, and the basic rhythms of daily life could unfold in a reliable, predictable way. This period was a true golden age where the sheer scale of Rome's power, its disciplined legions and organized administration, actually created a vast umbrella of peace, allowing diverse societies to prosper and distinct cultures to intertwine under a shared, unifying sense of order and security. Even those on the distant borders, while under the watchful eye of the legions, experienced a relative calm, knowing the might of Rome stood between them and any external threat. Under the Pax Romana, Roman culture experienced a truly breathtaking flourishing of art, architecture, and engineering. This was a time when Rome expressed its power, its stability, and its unique identity through incredibly beautiful and enduring creations. Grand public buildings rose majestically in cities across the empire, silent yet powerful statements of Rome's wealth and ambition. Magnificent temples dedicated to their gods were built with impressive columns of marble, soaring arches, and intricate carvings, inspiring awe and a deep sense of permanence in those who gazed upon them. Grand triumphal arches, adorned with detailed sculptures depicting victories, celebrated Rome's achievements not just as symbols of conquest, but as markers of the order and stability they had brought to the world. The distinct Roman architectural styles, with their innovative use of arches, domes, and a revolutionary material called concrete, spread throughout the provinces, creating a unified visual language across the vast empire. One could envision sculptors diligently working on marble busts, capturing human expression with serene realism, reflecting both individual character and Roman ideals. Picture poets composing timeless verses, their elegant words echoing through the quiet halls of libraries, telling stories of Roman heroes and the simple joys of life. Imagine mosaic artists carefully laying tiny colored tiles to create intricate patterns and vibrant scenes on floors and walls. There was a general cultural vibrancy, a quiet hum of creativity, intellectual pursuit, and philosophical thought that defined this remarkable age. The Romans were also master engineers, and their marvels truly supported and connected this peaceful empire, demonstrating their practical genius. Their vast network of roads stretched for thousands of miles, like strong, straight arteries connecting every corner of the Roman world. These weren't just simple paths, they were meticulously planned and expertly built, often paved with durable stone, featuring clear milestones and comfortable resting places for travelers. They allowed legions to move swiftly to protect the borders, but more importantly, they facilitated the safe and efficient movement of goods, people, and ideas, truly weaving the diverse provinces into a cohesive whole. Consider the intricate aqueducts, elegant stone structures spanning valleys and bringing fresh, vital water from distant springs directly into bustling Roman cities. These colossal works of engineering provided clean water for public baths, elaborate fountains, and private homes, contributing immensely to the health, hygiene, and comfort of urban life. The public baths themselves were not just places for cleanliness, but grand social centers for relaxation, exercise, and quiet conversation. Bridges, dams, and harbors also showcased their incredible skill, all working together to create a well-ordered, functioning society where daily life was remarkably comfortable and efficient for its time. This period was marked by widespread prosperity across the empire, a direct result of the Pax Romana. Bustling markets could be found in every city and town, filled with an incredible variety of goods from distant lands. Safe harbors along every coastline welcomed ships laden with abundant grain from Egypt and North Africa, rich olive oil from Spain, fine wines from Gaul, exotic spices from the East, and precious silks from distant China. The uninterrupted flow of goods and ideas created thriving local economies, allowing ordinary people, from merchants to artisans, to enjoy a better quality of life and a greater sense of security. This economic stability, deeply born from peace and efficient administration, fostered growth and opportunity across all layers of Roman society, spreading the benefits of the empire far and wide. Glimpses into the peaceful daily lives of ordinary citizens truly capture the essence of the Pax Romana. Children played in sunny courtyards, their laughter echoing gently through quiet neighborhoods. Scholars studied ancient texts in calm libraries, their minds engaged in profound contemplation, contributing to Rome's intellectual vibrancy. Families gathered in public spaces, enjoying the benefits of shared community life, perhaps strolling through a forum, or relaxing in the warm waters and quiet chatter of the public baths. Farmers tilled their fields without the constant fear of marauding armies, and merchants conducted their business with confidence in the safety and predictability of the roads and seas. Life had a predictable rhythm, a comforting flow, built upon the sturdy foundation of imperial peace. To truly immerse yourself in this time, consider the gentle sounds of a well-functioning Roman city. There was a quiet hum of activity, not a jarring cacophony, but the distant chatter of people going about their day. The gentle sounds of construction, the steady tap of a mason's hammer, the soft scrape of a shovel, spoke of continuous progress and growth. Far-off sounds of trade, perhaps the gentle creak of a cart laden with goods or the low murmur of voices from a busy market, blended into the background. The feel of warm sun on ancient stone, the comforting scent of baking bread from a local bakery, or the earthy smell of fresh produce in the market. These sensory details paint a vivid picture of a society thriving in a state of calm and abundance, enjoying the fruits of a well-ordered empire. This period stands as a golden age, a zenith of Roman power and cultural achievement. It was a time when the vast administrative and military might of Rome truly served to create a lasting peace, built on a foundation of order, strong governance, and widespread prosperity. The Pax Romana allowed Roman civilization to fully express itself, reaching incredible heights in art, engineering, and daily living. This era of golden tranquility set a standard for peace and stability that would be remembered and admired for centuries, forging the identity of an empire now firmly in control of its destiny. This remarkable stability would shape how daily life would unfold across its vast domain for generations to come, truly becoming the blueprint for urban life in the Roman world. After understanding the vast peace of the Pax Romana, our focus now gently shifts to the very heart of this great empire, the Roman city itself. These bustling centers were not just places where people lived. They were the beating pulse of Roman civilization, where culture, commerce, and community truly came alive. A typical Roman city, perhaps one like Ostia, the bustling port of Rome, or even the lively daily scenes that once unfolded in Pompeii before its peaceful existence was so dramatically interrupted, was more than just a collection of buildings. These cities were living, breathing communities, humming with a calm, structured, and surprisingly modern rhythm. Life here offered many comforts and a strong sense of shared experience, truly forming the very essence of the Roman world. The order and prosperity of the Pax Romana were most vividly felt within these urban hubs, where people from all corners of the empire lived, worked, and thrived together. One of the most cherished and central features of Roman urban life was the public baths. These were far more than just places to get clean. They were tranquil social hubs, absolutely vital to the daily routine of almost every Roman citizen, rich or poor. Early in the day, or perhaps in the afternoon, people would gather here for a leisurely stretch of time, dedicated to relaxation, gentle conversation, and light exercise. The warm water pooled in large basins, and steam rose softly into the air, creating a calming haze that seemed to melt away the day's worries. One could hear the quiet chatter of voices, the gentle splashing, and the soft sounds of people unwinding. Inside there were different rooms for different temperatures: the cool frigidarium, the warm tepidarium, and the steamy caldarium, each offering a unique experience. Romans might enjoy a gentle massage, engage in a friendly game of ball, or simply sit quietly on a stone bench reflecting. Many bath complexes were quite grand, including libraries where one could read a scroll, spacious gardens for a peaceful stroll, and even small shops selling oils or snacks. Here, Romans would cleanse themselves, meet friends, discuss the day's news or even political gossip, or simply sit in quiet contemplation. The baths fostered a powerful sense of community, a daily ritual of shared well-being that truly tied the city's inhabitants together, offering a communal refuge from the outside world. Beyond the baths, the markets were another essential part of city life. These were bustling, yet in a calm, orderly way that spoke to Roman efficiency. Early in the morning, merchants would set up their stalls, meticulously displaying a huge variety of goods from all corners of the empire. One could find fresh produce from local farms, crisp olives, ripe grapes, hearty grains, and an array of fresh vegetables, piled high alongside exotic spices from the distant east, fine woven textiles from Gaul, and delicate, beautifully crafted pottery from Greece. The gentle sounds of merchants calling out their wares in a rhythmic chant, the quiet haggling over prices, and the steady murmur of citizens going about their daily shopping filled the air. The comforting scent of freshly baked bread often wafted from a nearby baker's oven, mingling pleasantly with the earthy aromas of fresh produce and the subtle fragrance of herbs and spices. These markets were not chaotic squares. They were remarkably efficient, well-organized spaces where the constant flow of commerce brought abundance and convenience directly to urban dwellers. The sheer variety and quality of goods reflected the vast reach of the Roman trading network, making cities truly vibrant centers of economic activity and a testament to the empire's ability to connect distant lands. Integrated beautifully into the urban fabric were the temples, serene places of contemplation and worship that stood as quiet, majestic presences. These impressive structures, often adorned with grand columns, detailed friezes, and intricate carvings, rose elegantly, serving as constant reminders of the gods and the spiritual connection that was a deep part of daily Roman life. While grand public ceremonies and festivals might take place on special days, drawing large, reverent crowds, for much of the time, the temples were places for individual devotion. People would visit to offer quiet prayers, make small offerings, or simply sit in stillness, reflecting on their lives, their duties, and their place in the universe. The rituals performed here, while sometimes formal and steeped in tradition, were deeply meaningful on a personal level, providing a sense of comfort, continuity, and guidance. The pervasive presence of these sacred spaces within the busy city environment created a harmonious balance between the practical demands of daily life and the spiritual aspirations of the Roman people. The gentle ringing of bells or the distant call of a priest might occasionally drift through the city, adding to this sense of quiet reverence. For entertainment and community building, Romans turned to their theaters and other public venues. While some spectacles could be loud and exciting, many forms of entertainment focused on quieter, more communal experiences that fostered a shared sense of culture. Audiences sat comfortably in open-air theaters, under the warm Roman sun or the cool evening sky, listening to a quiet recitation of poetry, perhaps the epic verses of Virgil or Horace, or enjoying a gentle comedy that brought smiles to everyone's faces. Public lectures from philosophers or historians, musical performances with lyres and flutes, and storytelling sessions also took place, offering opportunities for shared experience and reflection. Sometimes there might even be quiet demonstrations of gladiatorial training or athletic contests, focusing on skill and artistry rather than violence. These gatherings fostered a strong sense of belonging and reinforced shared Roman values, providing pleasant distractions and moments of collective enjoyment without being overly boisterous or dramatic. They were vital for the civic life of the city, bringing people together in shared cultural moments that strengthened their bonds. A gentle, predictable rhythm guided the daily lives of Roman citizens. The morning would begin with a quiet awakening, perhaps a simple breakfast of bread, olives, and fruit. Morning routines involved getting ready for the day's tasks, often visiting the market, or attending to business matters in the forum. The middle of the day might bring a simple, shared meal with family or friends, a chance to rest and connect before the afternoon's activities. As the day eased into evening, the pace would naturally slow. Citizens would often visit the public baths for relaxation and conversation, or perhaps enjoy a leisurely stroll through a public garden or along a colonnaded street, meeting acquaintances and engaging in light conversation. The leisurely evenings were a time for family, quiet reflection, or perhaps a simple dinner, all unfolding against the backdrop of a well-ordered and peaceful city. A strong sense of community truly thrived within Roman cities. Neighbors interacted regularly, sharing news, offering help, and celebrating together. Public spaces like the bustling but organized forums were not just places for government or commerce. They were vibrant meeting points where citizens gathered to socialize, debate important topics, and simply be together. The shared access to public baths, the omnipresent public fountains, and the various entertainment venues further strengthened these bonds, creating a collective identity that was uniquely urban and deeply Roman. This close-knit atmosphere, despite the city's size and diversity of its inhabitants, made Roman cities feel like large, welcoming homes, where people found a sense of belonging and mutual support. Guilds of craftsmen, neighborhood associations, and family groups all contributed to this rich tapestry of communal life. The widespread comforts of urban living were largely thanks to remarkable engineering marvels that silently supported daily life. Sophisticated sanitation systems, including complex underground sewers and drainage channels, carried waste away from the city, contributing significantly to public health and cleanliness. Paved streets, often with raised sidewalks and even clear street signs, made walking and chariot travel within the city clean, orderly, and relatively quiet. The intricate water supply networks, carried by majestic aqueducts, fed numerous public fountains and private homes, providing an abundant supply of clean, fresh water easily accessible to everyone. These impressive engineering feats were not just visually grand. They were highly practical systems that contributed directly to a sense of order, comfort, and well-being in Roman urban life. They silently shaped the daily experience, allowing for a level of convenience and hygiene that was truly uncommon in the ancient world, a testament to Rome's practical genius. To truly capture the sensory experience of a Roman city, one might notice the distant, continuous chatter of many voices, a soothing hum of human activity that was always present. The gentle sounds of water flowing constantly from public fountains provided a calming, refreshing backdrop. The quiet clatter of chariots on paved streets, not a frantic rush, but a steady, rhythmic movement of city life, could be heard. The comforting scent of baking bread wafting from local ovens, mingling pleasantly with the earthy smells of fresh produce in the market and the faint aroma of flowers from a nearby garden, was often present. These subtle details paint a vivid picture of a bustling yet remarkably well-ordered society, where daily life unfolded with a distinct and pleasant harmony. As we conclude our glimpse into the Roman city, this feeling of having experienced the calm, sophisticated, and deeply communal spirit of Roman urban life will settle over you. These cities, with their careful planning, their shared spaces, and their gentle daily rhythms, were not just centers of power, but places where ordinary people lived lives of comfort, connection, and peace, embodying the very essence of the Pax Romana. This urban harmony formed the crucial foundation for the empire's deeper intellectual and spiritual life, as well as its enduring philosophical wisdom, which we will explore next. Having explored the rhythm of daily life within a Roman city, let us now turn our attention inward, to the landscapes of Roman thought and spirituality. Beyond the grand buildings and bustling markets, a rich tapestry of beliefs, philosophies, and intellectual pursuits shaped the inner lives of Roman citizens. This was a realm where ancient traditions met new ideas, creating a fascinating blend of practical wisdom and profound contemplation. It was a quieter aspect of Roman life, perhaps less visible than their grand public works, but no less fundamental to their identity and enduring legacy. Indeed, this internal order and sense of purpose often mirrored the external peace of the Pax Romana. At the heart of Roman spirituality lay their deep reverence for a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses. These deities were not distant, abstract figures. They were woven into the very fabric of daily life, present in the home, the city, and the very ground beneath their feet. Romans honored gods like Jupiter, the mighty king of the gods and protector of the state; Juno, his queen and protector of women and marriage; Mars, the stern god of war, whose influence was felt in every legion; and Venus, the gentle goddess of love and beauty. Each god and goddess had specific roles, overseeing different aspects of life, from agriculture and the harvest to law and justice, from the sanctity of the family to the success of military campaigns. Worship was often a personal and familial matter, with small, dedicated household shrines, lauraria, where offerings of fruit, wine, or incense were made to guardian spirits that protected the home. Public worship was equally important, with grand temples dedicated to these deities across the empire, standing as silent monuments to their devotion. Priests and priestesses, appointed for specific cults, conducted elaborate rituals, formal sacrifices, and vibrant festivals according to ancient traditions. These practices were carefully observed to ensure the favor of the gods for the well-being of the state, the success of its ventures, and the prosperity of its people. This was not a religion based on deep spiritual revelation or individual salvation, but on careful observance, a practical exchange where piety and proper ritual ensured cosmic order and earthly prosperity. The gentle sounds of temple bells, the murmur of prayers, and the quiet reverence felt in sacred spaces were integral to the Roman experience, a constant reminder of their place in the divine order. Sometimes, before a great undertaking, augurs would calmly observe the flight of birds or the entrails of animals, seeking the gods' omens, ensuring their actions were aligned with divine will. Beyond the formal state religion, Romans also held a deep respect for the spirits of their ancestors and the land. The Lauras, household gods, and Penates, gods of the larder or pantry, were cherished figures, protecting the family home, its provisions, and its continuity. Every home, from the grandest urban villa to the simplest rural dwelling, would have its own small shrine dedicated to these spirits, a quiet, personal place for offerings and remembrance. This deep connection to ancestors provided a strong link to the past, a sense of continuity, tradition, and duty that permeated family life and the wider society. It reinforced the idea that one's actions honored those who came before and laid the groundwork for future generations. Additionally, Romans believed in local spirits, the noumena, nymphs of springs, dryads of trees, and deities of specific places, fostering a gentle reverence for the natural world around them. This intricate web of beliefs provided comfort, guidance, and a constant reminder of their place within a larger, interconnected cosmos. It was a quiet, personal spirituality that beautifully complemented the grand public ceremonies, grounding Roman religious life in both the intimate and the public sphere. As the empire grew, Romans often absorbed the local deities of conquered peoples into their own pantheon, demonstrating a pragmatic and inclusive approach to spirituality that helped maintain peace across diverse regions. As Rome expanded and connected with different cultures, particularly the highly sophisticated Greeks, new ideas and ways of thinking began to flow into its intellectual landscape. Philosophy became an increasingly important aspect of Roman thought, offering guidance on how to live a good, virtuous, and peaceful life amidst the demands of a growing empire. While the Romans deeply admired Greek philosophical ideas and often studied them intently, they typically adopted and adapted them with a practical, grounded approach. They weren't always interested in abstract, purely theoretical discussions. They sought wisdom that could be directly applied to daily decisions, public service, personal conduct, and the art of governance. The rustle of parchment scrolls in a quiet library, the soft murmur of a teacher explaining complex ideas, or the thoughtful silence during contemplation were all part of this intellectual pursuit. Two schools of thought particularly resonated with the Roman spirit and gained widespread followings: Stoicism and Epicureanism. Stoicism, with its profound emphasis on virtue, duty, reason, and emotional resilience, perfectly suited the Roman character and their ingrained sense of discipline. Stoic thinkers like the insightful philosopher Seneca the Younger and the great emperor Marcus Aurelius taught that true happiness and inner peace came from living in harmony with nature's universal reason, accepting what one could not change, and focusing diligently on one's moral obligations and responsibilities to others. They advocated for cultivating a deep calmness in the face of adversity, finding profound peace within oneself regardless of external circumstances, be they personal loss or political upheaval. This philosophy offered a quiet strength, a way to navigate life's challenges with composure, dignity, and a clear conscience. Epicureanism, on the other hand, focused on achieving tranquility, ataraxia, and freedom from fear and pain, not through wild excess, but through moderation, the cultivation of true friendship, and calm intellectual pursuits. While sometimes misunderstood as promoting mere indulgence, true Epicureanism advocated for a simple, self-sufficient life, free from unnecessary desires, political ambition, and anxieties. It emphasized that pleasure, rightly understood, was the absence of pain and disturbance. These philosophical schools offered different, yet equally valid, paths to inner peace, but both ultimately aimed at cultivating a balanced, rational, and fulfilling life. For many educated Romans, these philosophical ideas provided a quiet internal compass, helping them find balance amidst the intense demands of a vast and complex empire. They fostered introspection and a calm, rational approach to life's many uncertainties, encouraging a deliberate and considered existence. The Romans also deeply valued oratory and rhetoric, the demanding art of persuasive speaking. In a society where public service, legal arguments, and political influence were absolutely vital, the ability to speak clearly, logically, and powerfully was a highly prized skill, diligently practiced from a young age. Famous figures like Cicero, whose voice could sway the Senate, honed this art to perfection, using their meticulously chosen words to influence state policy, defend clients in court, and shape public opinion. Oratory was not just about making arguments. It was about the careful crafting of language, the graceful and impactful delivery, the mastery of memory, and the profound ability to inspire, convince, and calmly guide an audience. This rigorous pursuit of eloquent expression reflected a society that deeply valued reasoned debate, intellectual prowess, and the formidable power of well-chosen words to guide thought and action in the public sphere. It was a calm, intellectual pursuit that had profound practical applications in their daily political and legal life, often determining success or failure. Education in Rome was primarily focused on preparing young people, especially boys from well-to-do families, for a life of public service, military leadership, and practical roles within the state. They would typically learn Latin and Greek, history, literature, rhetoric, and basic mathematics, sometimes geometry and even astronomy. Girls typically received their education at home, focusing on managing a household, traditional virtues, and sometimes arts like music. The aim was to produce well-rounded, disciplined citizens who understood their duty to the state and their family, capable of leading and contributing to the common good. This strong focus on practical knowledge, moral development, and civic responsibility instilled a deep sense of order and accountability from a young age, contributing significantly to the overall stability of Roman society. Libraries, often grand public spaces attached to public baths or temples, provided quiet havens for study and contemplation, filled with precious scrolls of history, philosophy, poetry, and scientific treatises. The soft rustle of papyrus and the quiet murmur of readers were common sounds in these centers of learning. Finally, the Roman approach to law was a profound testament to their deep-seated practical intelligence and their unwavering desire for order and justice. Roman law wasn't static. It constantly evolved, adapting to the changing needs of a vast and diverse empire that encompassed countless different peoples and customs. It aimed to provide a consistent, predictable framework for justice across all territories. Principles like innocent until proven guilty, the importance of evidence, and the right to a fair hearing became fundamental cornerstones of their legal system. This sophisticated system of law was designed to bring clarity, fairness, and predictability to social interactions, commercial agreements, and disputes, fostering a deep sense of security and stability throughout the empire. The very structure of Roman legal thought, with its logical categorization, precise definitions, and careful reasoning, reflected a society that valued intellect, pragmatism, and the systematic pursuit of order in human affairs. It was a profoundly calming force, providing a clear path for resolving conflicts, protecting rights, and ensuring the smooth, harmonious functioning of daily life, from a simple property contract to complex provincial administration. The sound of a public scribe calmly reading out a new decree brought clarity and certainty to the citizens. The quiet pursuit of knowledge, the practice of philosophical wisdom, and the enduring strength of their spiritual and legal traditions formed the rich, intricate inner landscape of the Roman Empire. These were not always the most visible or dramatic aspects of Roman life, but they were the deep roots that sustained their civilization, providing a consistent sense of purpose, morality, and social cohesion. This intellectual and spiritual depth added another profound layer to the Pax Romana, ensuring that the peace was not just external, maintained by legions and roads, but also sought and cultivated within the individual and the collective Roman soul, providing a lasting foundation for their long era of greatness. The Roman Empire, under the vast blanket of the Pax Romana, experienced an extraordinary period of peace and prosperity. Its cities thrived, its roads connected distant lands, and a sense of order settled over a vast portion of the world. Yet, even in this golden age, beneath the surface of apparent tranquility, subtle challenges began to emerge. These were not sudden, violent shocks that threatened immediate collapse, but more like quiet, persistent pressures, slowly building up and beginning to stretch the mighty framework of the empire. This part of our story explores these quiet tensions, the first gentle tremors that would eventually lead to larger, more profound changes, reminding us that even the most enduring and seemingly unshakable structures require constant care, adaptation, and an awareness of the forces slowly working against them. These were slow-motion shifts, often imperceptible in a single lifetime, but cumulative over centuries. One significant challenge, slowly growing in the background, was the sheer size and complexity of governing such a vast territory. Rome had grown from a city on 7 hills to an empire that spanned continents, encompassing a multitude of different cultures, languages, and local traditions. While the Romans were incredibly skilled administrators, known for their orderly approach, maintaining consistent control and swift communication across such immense distances was a constant, quiet struggle. Sending orders from the emperor in Rome to distant provinces like Britannia in the north, Egypt in the south, or Syria in the east could take weeks or even months, making quick responses to local issues very difficult. Collecting taxes fairly from diverse economies, ensuring justice was applied consistently according to Roman law across countless local customs, and managing the unique needs of myriad communities required an immense and growing bureaucracy. This logistical challenge meant that even the most efficient systems were stretched thin, and local issues could sometimes fester into larger problems without immediate resolution or understanding from the central government. Provincial governors, while largely loyal, sometimes wielded vast power, leading to subtle variations in how the empire was managed from region to region. It was a slow, persistent pressure on the administrative heart of the empire, like a huge ship needing ever more careful steering to stay precisely on course through changing currents. Another evolving aspect was the nature of the Roman army itself. During the Pax Romana, the legions largely shifted from active conquest to a role of steadfast defense. Their primary mission became guarding the vast, lengthy borders of the empire, from the deserts of North Africa, across the rivers and forests of Germania, to the distant reaches of Britain. This required them to be spread out in numerous permanent garrisons, often constructing impressive fortifications like Hadrian's Wall as fixed boundaries. While this brought security and peace to the interior, it also meant that soldiers often served for very long periods, sometimes 20 years or more, in distant lands. They would often marry local women, raise families, and develop strong ties to their provincial homes and communities rather than to Italy itself. The quiet discipline of camp life, the steady drills, the careful patrol routes, and the constant watchfulness at the frontiers became their daily rhythm. While still highly effective and professional, this army, decentralized and deeply rooted in local areas, was gradually changing. Its loyalty remained strong to the reigning emperor, but its direct, personal connection to the heart of Rome became somewhat less immediate, representing a subtle shift in its core identity and composition. Maintaining such a large, dispersed, and professional force also placed a continuous and increasing financial strain on the imperial treasury, a quiet but persistent demand on Rome's resources. Economically, while the Pax Romana brought immense prosperity and an explosion of trade, it also led to some quiet, long-term issues. The vast scale of Roman agriculture, especially the huge estates known as latifundia using enslaved labor, sometimes made it increasingly difficult for smaller, independent farmers to compete, much as we saw beginning in the late Republic. Many rural folk were pushed off their land and into the cities seeking work, which strained urban resources. While there were periods of great wealth and widespread commerce across the empire, this wealth wasn't always evenly distributed. Much of it accumulated in the hands of a relatively few elite families and merchants, creating quiet but growing disparities. Some parts of the empire flourished more than others, leading to subtle imbalances. Dependence on specific regions for crucial resources, like the vital grain supply from Egypt and North Africa, meant that even minor interruptions to trade routes, though rare during the peak of the Pax Romana, could cause local difficulties or price spikes in Rome. Over time, there were also subtle pressures on the coinage, with emperors occasionally debasing the silver content to pay for expenses, leading to a very gradual, almost imperceptible inflation that quietly eroded the value of money for ordinary people. The low hum of vast trade and the quiet clatter of goods in bustling markets often masked these underlying economic currents and potential vulnerabilities. Socially, the empire was also experiencing gradual, unhurried changes. The Roman people were becoming increasingly diverse, with citizens, allies, and subjects from countless different backgrounds, all contributing to the vast cultural tapestry. While Rome was largely successful at integrating these populations, bringing them under the umbrella of Roman law and administration, this vast mix brought new cultural traditions, new languages, and sometimes new pressures on the old Roman ways of life. Over time, some Romans, particularly among the urban elite, became less focused on the traditional civic virtues of simplicity, duty, and frugality that had defined the early republic and its soldier farmers. With greater wealth and a more settled, comfortable life, there was a quiet drift towards luxury, personal comforts, and grander displays of status. This wasn't a decline into immediate decadence, but a gentle, long-term shift away from the austere ideals of their ancestors, a subtle evolution in their societal values that began to spread. Furthermore, new belief systems, particularly early Christianity, began to quietly spread through the empire. While often persecuted, its followers formed close-knit communities, subtly challenging some traditional Roman religious practices and civic duties, representing another quiet, internal cultural shift. Even within Rome's impressive governance, subtle pressures began to mount. The very system of a single emperor, while bringing peace and stability after the civil wars, placed immense, almost unbearable power and responsibility on one person. The process of succession, of choosing the next emperor, was always a delicate matter because there was no clear, undisputed rule for who would take power. This often led to quiet maneuvering, political plotting, or even brief periods of instability and civil strife among rival claimants before a new emperor could firmly establish his authority. The Senate, while still respected and consulted, saw its real power slowly diminish over time, becoming more of an advisory body that largely rubber-stamped imperial decisions rather than a true legislative power with independent authority. This slow shift in the balance of power, while ensuring imperial stability in the short term, also meant that the vibrant debates and shared responsibilities of the old republic faded into a quieter, more centralized form of rule, concentrating immense burdens on the emperor's shoulders. The very structure of governance became more complex, needing constant careful adjustment to keep the vast machinery of the empire running smoothly, often relying on the personal qualities of the emperor. Perhaps one of the most gradual but significant changes was a quiet, internal shift in Roman values and mindset. The boundless energy, fierce determination, and relentless drive that characterized the Republic's rise and the initial imperial expansion slowly began to evolve. As the empire matured and reached its vast territorial limits, some Romans developed a more introspective and perhaps less aggressively ambitious outlook. The emphasis on conquest and military glory, while still present and celebrated, was often overshadowed by the peaceful enjoyment of imperial benefits, the pursuit of comfort, and the flourishing of culture and intellectual life. This wasn't a weakness, but a natural evolution, like an adult settling into a comfortable, established routine after a striving, adventurous youth. This subtle change in collective mindset, though difficult to pinpoint exactly, contributed to a different kind of Roman identity, one more focused on maintaining existing peace and prosperity rather than constantly expanding and dominating. The grandeur was now about solidifying, not always conquering. As the Pax Romana continued, there were also subtle, underlying pressures from outside the empire's borders. While the legions largely kept these threats at bay, there was a growing awareness of various groups beyond the frontiers: Germanic tribes along the Rhine and Danube, nomadic peoples on the eastern deserts, and the rising Sassanid Persian Empire to the east. These were not always direct, large-scale military threats in this period, but sometimes involved constant skirmishes, border raids, or migrating peoples whose movements could place quiet, persistent pressure on Roman defenses. The constant need for vigilance along thousands of miles of border, while manageable, was a continuous drain on resources and manpower, a persistent, low-level hum of military activity that never truly ceased. It was a constant reminder that even the greatest peace required unending watchfulness, immense resources, and diligent effort, keeping the Empire's military machine quietly but constantly active. These quiet, unfolding challenges were not immediate dangers threatening the stability of the Pax Romana directly. Instead, they were subtle fissures, gradual shifts in the bedrock of the Empire, which, over centuries, would slowly begin to reshape its future course. They were the gentle echoes of change, reminders that no empire, however grand, can remain entirely static or immune to the passage of time and the forces of growth and evolution. The wisdom of Roman leadership in the coming centuries would be profoundly tested by their ability to recognize and adapt to these slow currents, to maintain the harmony and integrity of their vast domain amidst these evolving pressures. The empire, seemingly unshakable and eternal, was quietly entering a new phase of its long, magnificent story, one that would demand different kinds of strength, foresight, and adaptability. The magnificent peace of the Pax Romana, a period spanning over 2 centuries, was an extraordinary achievement, fostering immense prosperity and stability across the vast Roman world. Its cities thrived, its carefully constructed roads connected distant lands, and a profound sense of order settled over a vast portion of the known world. Yet, as we noted, even during this golden age, quiet, persistent challenges were slowly gathering strength beneath the surface. Like the subtle, relentless pressure of water against ancient stone, these forces gradually began to wear upon the sturdy foundations of the empire. This part of our story delves into the era when these fissures widened, and the previously manageable pressures grew into significant, undeniable strains, quietly reshaping Rome's destiny in profound ways. It was not a sudden, cataclysmic collapse, but a long, deliberate unfolding, a testament to the immense strength that was still present, even as the sprawling imperial system faced entirely new kinds of burdens and demands. These were slow-motion shifts in the very fabric of time, often imperceptible in a single lifetime, but cumulative and irreversible over generations. One of the most noticeable and persistent shifts came from increased external pressures on the borders. The period following the height of the Pax Romana saw the rise of more organized, formidable, and determined threats from outside the empire's vast defensive lines. On the long northern frontiers, particularly across the Great Rhine and Danube rivers, various Germanic tribes, once fragmented and less cohesive, began to coalesce into larger, more coordinated groups. These were no longer just small raiding parties seeking plunder. They were sometimes vast confederations with more organized leadership and, crucially, often improved weaponry and tactics. Their movements were sometimes driven by their own needs, drawn by the perceived wealth of the Roman lands, or, subtly, pushed by the migrations of even more distant peoples from deeper within the European interior. To the east, a powerful new rival emerged, the Sassanid Persian Empire. This was not merely a tribal force but a sophisticated, well-organized state with its own grand traditions, a formidable heavy cavalry, the cataphracts, and a mastery of siege warfare. They were capable of challenging Roman power directly and consistently in the prosperous provinces of the Middle East, contesting vital territories like Mesopotamia and Syria. These external threats were not constant, overwhelming invasions everywhere at once, but rather a cumulative series of engagements, requiring continuous military engagement and draining vast resources, both in precious manpower and increasingly scarce treasury funds. The legions, once primarily conquering forces, were now stretched thin along thousands of miles of frontier, engaging in a perpetual, exhausting defense. The peace and security that the Pax Romana had guaranteed for the interior became notably less certain in peripheral regions, where border towns and rural communities lived under a persistent, low hum of vigilance and the constant threat of occasional, destructive incursions. This incessant defensive posture decisively shifted the empire's strategic focus and its allocation of precious resources. Compounding these external strains was a growing and pervasive internal instability, particularly pronounced in what historians often call the crisis of the 3rd century, roughly spanning from 235 to 284 CE. This tumultuous period was characterized by an alarming and rapid succession of emperors, a stark contrast to the stable line of rulers during the Pax Romana. There was no clear, established rule for imperial succession, and the army, now a highly professional and powerful force with immense regional influence, frequently took matters into its own hands, proclaiming its own victorious generals as emperors. This led to what became known as the barracks emperors, a relentless cycle of ambitious generals seizing power, often through assassination, mutiny, or brief civil wars, only to be overthrown quickly by another rival claimant. The average reign was incredibly short, sometimes just a few months, and many met violent ends. This constant shifting of leadership created profound political instability at the very top, making effective long-term governance almost impossible. Each new emperor, often a general focused on securing his own position, would need to reward his loyal troops lavishly, leading to increased military spending that further strained the already dwindling imperial treasury. These ceaseless internal conflicts drained the empire's resources and manpower catastrophically, as legions were frequently diverted to fight other Roman legions rather than external foes, leaving borders vulnerable. The quiet hum of stability was replaced by an unsettling undercurrent of uncertainty. Trade routes were disrupted as merchants feared banditry or military requisitions. Agricultural lands suffered in regions touched by constant conflict, and once thriving cities were sometimes plundered by rival Roman armies. Widespread famine and even plagues often followed these periods of disruption, further exacerbating the crisis and diminishing the population. Economically, the strains intensified across the entire empire. The immense military spending required for both border defense and the constant civil wars, coupled with the political instability, led to rampant inflation. Emperors, desperate to pay their vast armies and a bloated administration, began a systematic debasement of the coinage, gradually reducing the amount of precious metal, silver and gold, in their coins. This meant that the same coin was worth less and less over time, causing prices to rise dramatically and eroding trust in the currency itself. For ordinary citizens, this meant a loss of faith in their money, making long-term saving or planning nearly impossible and eroding the wealth of those on fixed incomes. Farmers found it harder to sell their goods for a reliable price, and merchants faced great uncertainty, sometimes reverting to barter. The difficulties in collecting taxes from a disrupted and declining economy further exacerbated the financial crisis. In some areas, once vibrant urban economies began to break down entirely as insecurity, rising costs, and disrupted trade made commerce too risky. This led to a subtle but significant shift towards more localized, self-sufficient economies, where communities relied more on what they could produce themselves rather than on goods from distant regions. The complex economic web of the Pax Romana began to unravel in places, replaced by simpler, more resilient, but ultimately less prosperous local system. Administratively, the challenges deepened as well. The central government, frequently changing hands and often preoccupied with military survival, found it increasingly difficult to exercise firm control over distant provinces. Communication remained slow and unreliable, and local officials sometimes acted with greater independence, or powerful local strongmen emerged, filling the void left by a weak or absent imperial authority. During the crisis, there were even periods when parts of the empire temporarily broke away, forming their own splinter empires, such as the Gallic Empire in the west or the Palmyrene Empire in the east, though these were eventually reabsorbed. This fragmentation underscored the immense difficulty of maintaining uniform law and order across vastly different, increasingly independent regions. The sheer burden of border defense and internal administration simply became too heavy for the existing, largely unified structures. The once seamless operation of the vast Roman administrative machine, once so well-oiled, began to groan under the sheer weight of its responsibilities and the lack of consistent, powerful central guidance. In response to these profound and multifaceted challenges, strong, often ruthless, but ultimately pragmatic emperors emerged who recognized the absolute necessity for fundamental change. This was a period of bold, sometimes harsh, but utterly decisive reforms. Diocletian, who reigned from 284 to 305 CE, was one such pivotal figure. He correctly assessed that the empire was simply too vast for one man to govern effectively and defend alone. His bold solution was to divide the empire for administrative purposes, creating a system known as the Tetrarchy, literally rule by four. Two senior emperors, called Augusti, governed the east and west, each with a junior emperor, a Caesar, who would eventually succeed them. This was a purely practical decision, aimed at greater efficiency in managing and defending the vast borders from multiple threats simultaneously, and ensuring a planned succession rather than violent usurpation. He also attempted to stabilize the collapsing economy with strict price edicts, though these were largely unsuccessful due to market forces, and implemented sweeping tax reforms, often harsh, but designed to create a more stable revenue stream for the state. Diocletian also centralized power further, increasing the size and power of the bureaucracy to enforce his will, making the empire more authoritarian but aiming for greater efficiency and control. Following Diocletian, Constantine the Great emerged as another pivotal figure, consolidating power after a period of civil war within the Tetrarchy itself. His decisive military victories ended the tetrarchic system and temporarily reunified the empire under a single, strong ruler, demonstrating renewed centralized strength. Crucially, Constantine established a new capital city in the east, Constantinople, on the incredibly strategic Bosporus Strait. This new city, often grandiosely called New Rome, became a powerful symbol and a practical administrative and military hub, subtly but decisively shifting the center of imperial gravity eastward, closer to the wealthier eastern provinces and the persistent Sassanid threat. Furthermore, Constantine's adoption of Christianity as a favored religion, culminating in his own eventual conversion, marked a truly profound cultural and spiritual transformation for the empire. This was not a sign of decline but a major shift in the underlying values and outlook of the Roman world, gradually moving away from traditional polytheism towards monotheism, shaping the spiritual future of Europe and imbuing the imperial office with a new kind of divine legitimacy. These sweeping reforms, while necessary and often effective in providing immediate stability, also underscored the profound and irreversible transformations taking place. The Roman Empire, once unified and outwardly expansive, was becoming increasingly fortified, divided for administrative purposes, and somewhat fragmented in practice. The very concept of Roman identity subtly evolved further, becoming less about shared Italian heritage and more about loyalty to the emperor and participation in the imperial system, regardless of one's origin. The relentless external pressures, coupled with internal strife, fostered the emergence of a distinct late antique mindset, less focused on grand conquest and universal dominion, and more focused on maintaining order within its established borders, on spiritual matters, accelerated by the rise of Christianity, and on localized survival and resilience. These were the centuries when the vibrant, unified Pax Romana slowly, inexorably gave way to a new reality. The immense structure of the empire was being adapted, its foundations shored up, but undeniably also subtly redefined. The wisdom of Roman leadership in this era lay in their ability to recognize the changing tides and to implement radical, often difficult, but absolutely necessary reforms. These efforts ensured the empire's survival for centuries to come, but they also set the stage for very different futures for the now increasingly distinct eastern and western halves. as the long, magnificent story of Rome continued to unfold in new and complex ways. The extraordinary period of the Pax Romana, marked by widespread peace and prosperity, had gradually given way to an era of increasing strain. The bold, often ruthless, but ultimately necessary reforms initiated by emperors like Diocletian and Constantine, while crucial for preserving the vast Roman state, fundamentally reshaped its very nature. They created a more centralized, fortified, and ultimately, a divided empire, acknowledging the immense practical challenges of ruling such a sprawling domain. This part of our story quietly traces these diverging paths, leading to distinct and different destinies for the eastern and western halves of Rome, reminding us that even the mightiest structures can undergo profound transformations rather than simply crumbling into dust. It was a long, slow process of separation and adaptation, like a great river quietly splitting into two distinct, enduring streams, each carving its own course through the changing landscape of time. The fall of Rome, particularly in the West, was less a sudden, cataclysmic event and more a prolonged, complex metamorphosis. The most significant development following the era of reform was the clear divergence of the eastern and western halves of the empire. This was not a sudden, clean break like a snapped branch, but a gradual process rooted deeply in their differing inherent strengths and vulnerabilities, both geographic and economic. The Western Roman Empire, with its capital eventually shifting from Rome to Ravenna for defensive purposes, due to Rome's increasing vulnerability, faced a considerably more challenging landscape. It was generally less urbanized than the East, with its wealth concentrated in fewer, often vulnerable areas. Its economic base was more reliant on agriculture, which was increasingly disrupted by instability and barbarian incursions. Crucially, the West possessed vast, open land borders, the lengthy stretches of the Rhine and Danube rivers, that were far more exposed to the relentless pressure of barbarian migrations and invasions. These broad, flat plains offered fewer natural defensive barriers compared to the East's more defensible peninsulas, mountain ranges, and narrow straits. The political geography of the West meant its power centers were often deep within vulnerable territories. Furthermore, the social stratification in the West often saw a smaller, increasingly isolated elite holding vast tracts of land, while a large, struggling rural population lacked significant upward mobility or a strong voice. This contributed to reduced internal cohesion and a weaker sense of shared purpose compared to the East. In stark contrast, the Eastern Roman Empire, soon to be known to history as the Byzantine Empire, possessed significant inherent advantages that allowed it to endure. Its capital, Constantinople, founded by Constantine, was ideally and strategically located, easily defensible by its formidable triple land walls and its natural sea access, and sat at the crossroads of vital trade routes connecting the wealth of Asia to the markets of Europe. This made the East consistently wealthier, more urbanized, and culturally more vibrant, with a thriving intellectual tradition rooted in Greek learning. Its administrative structure, refined over centuries, was generally more efficient and resilient, boasting a larger and more effective tax base due to its richer provinces and more stable economy. The Eastern emperors also often enjoyed a more institutionalized and stable line of succession, often through the bureaucracy, significantly reducing the frequency of devastating internal civil wars and barracks emperors that so plagued the West. The East's stronger economic base also allowed it, at times, to strategically buy off or deflect barbarian threats, diverting them westward or paying them to serve as allies, rather than always having to fight them head-on. This profound contrast illuminates that Rome did not truly fall everywhere. Rather, its center of gravity quietly but decisively shifted eastward, allowing a vital continuation of Roman power, law, and culture for another 1,000 years. The Western Roman Empire, however, bore the unrelenting brunt of the increased migration and invasions that intensified throughout the 4th and 5th centuries CE. These were not always outright invasions for conquest, but often involved massive, continuous movements of entire peoples. Various Germanic tribes, including the Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Franks, were relentlessly pressing against and eventually crossing the Roman borders, sometimes moving deeper into the empire's heartland. Their motivations were complex, sometimes driven by their own demographic pressures, other times by significant climatic changes affecting their homelands, and often, critically, pushed by the terrifying and brutal advance of the Huns from the Eurasian steppes further east. The sheer volume, persistence, and increasing organization of these migrations simply overwhelmed Roman defenses. The Roman response was often multifaceted, fighting fiercely in pitched battles, but also, pragmatically, settling these tribes within the empire's borders as federates, allies, in exchange for military service and a share of Roman land. While this provided immediate, much-needed manpower, it gradually led to a creeping loss of effective Roman control over vast territories, as these federate kingdoms became increasingly independent enclaves, kingdoms within the empire, asserting their own authority and effectively ruling over Roman populations. This was a slow, quiet transfer of effective authority, often unnoticed by the common person from day to day, but cumulatively profound. As a result, many Roman provinces became increasingly isolated from central Roman authority, relying on local arrangements for defense and governance, fundamentally changing how the Roman identity was experienced in these distant areas. Deepening these relentless external pressures were persistent and escalating internal weaknesses within the West. Political instability remained a chronic problem, characterized by the rapid turnover of weak emperors. These figureheads were frequently controlled by powerful generals, many of whom were themselves of Germanic origin, like Stilicho or Ricimer, holding the real levers of power behind the throne. This pervasive lack of strong, consistent leadership at the imperial level prevented effective long-term strategies and often led to further fragmentation of authority as local leaders felt less obligated to a constantly changing central power. Economically, the West continued its quiet, agonizing decline. Ruralization accelerated dramatically as insecure cities lost population and economic vibrancy, their once bustling markets becoming quieter. Trade networks, once the lifeblood of the empire, continued to shrink, leading to widespread decline in urban centers and a general impoverishment. Tax collection became increasingly difficult, almost impossible in areas dominated by new barbarian rulers or powerful local landowners, leading to a chronic lack of funds for the central government and its crucial military. The economy became increasingly localized and agricultural, based on large, self-sufficient estates, latifundia, where people sought security by becoming clients of powerful landowners, effectively bypassing the state. This also saw the decline of the once vibrant Roman middle class, the backbone of urban life and efficient tax collection. The military, too, faced immense challenges. It became increasingly difficult to recruit Roman citizens who might prefer to avoid dangerous military service or who simply no longer identified strongly with a distant, unstable empire. This led to an increasing barbarization of the military, where legions spoke German or Gothic more often than Latin, further diluting the traditional Roman character of the army and sometimes raising questions of loyalty. The loss of central authority was palpable. Imperial power effectively became localized to Italy, then eventually to just a few strongholds, and finally became almost non-existent in many former provinces, which were increasingly ruled by independent barbarian kings. The symbolic fall of the Western Roman Empire is often marked as 476 CE. In that year, the last Roman emperor in the West, a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, was quietly deposed by a Germanic general named Odoacer. This event was not a dramatic, cataclysmic sacking or outright destruction of Rome itself. Indeed, life largely continued for the ordinary people. However, it was profoundly symbolic. Odoacer famously sent the imperial regalia, the symbols of power, to the Eastern Emperor in Constantinople, effectively acknowledging his sole claim to the imperial title, while Odoacer himself ruled Italy as a king under the Eastern Emperor's nominal authority. This act marked the end of continuous Roman imperial rule in the West, the absence of a Roman emperor on Western soil. Real power had already devolved to various barbarian kings and local strongmen for decades. This was simply the final, quiet curtain call for the Western line of emperors. The political map of Europe began to redraw itself, leading to the formation of various Germanic kingdoms, each blending Roman and barbarian elements in complex ways. Despite this fall, much of Rome's immense legacy quietly endured in the West, demonstrating a remarkable resilience and adaptability. Roman law, though adapted and simplified, continued to influence the legal systems of the emerging Germanic kingdoms. The Latin language, while evolving, persisted as the language of administration, learning, and crucially, the Church, eventually giving rise to the Romance languages we know today. Perhaps most importantly, Christianity, nurtured within the Roman Empire, grew stronger and provided a new unifying spiritual and administrative force, often taking on many of Rome's organizational structures. Roman administrative practices such as taxation and record-keeping were adapted by the new Germanic rulers, and Roman infrastructure like roads, bridges, and aqueducts, though often falling into disrepair, continued to exist and define the landscape, a silent testament to past greatness. Crucially, the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, continued to flourish for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, Greek learning, and classical culture. Its emperors in Constantinople still saw themselves as the legitimate inheritors of Rome, maintaining its traditions and laws, albeit with a distinct Greek language and a strong Christian focus that shaped its unique character. This empire faced its own new challenges, from Persians, Arabs, and Slavs, but it adapted and endured, successfully preserving classical learning that would later be vital for the European Renaissance. This remarkable continuity in the East is vital for understanding that Rome did not entirely vanish from the world stage in 476 CE. Its focus shifted, its identity evolved, but the spirit of the empire, its legal system, its urbanism, and its cultural legacy lived on. The fall of the West was thus a complex, lengthy, and multifaceted process of transformation, dissolution, and adaptation, rather than a simple, sudden end. It was a gradual reshaping of the ancient world into the very foundations of medieval Europe, demonstrating both the fragility of even the greatest power and the remarkable resilience and continuity of its legacy. The Roman story didn't end but flowed into new channels, subtly shaping the future even as its old form dissolved. Our exploration of the Roman Empire reveals that even as its political structures shifted and its western half transformed, the essence of Rome did not simply vanish. Instead, its most profound contributions quietly, persistently, continued to shape the world, much like deep currents shaping the ocean floor long after surface storms have passed. Rome's legacy is not merely found in ancient ruins, but lives on, subtly woven into the very fabric of our modern lives, a testament to its profound and truly lasting influence. One of Rome's most enduring and fundamental contributions lies in its sophisticated law and governance. The Roman legal system, with its groundbreaking emphasis on rationality, justice, and the methodical categorization of laws, became the intellectual bedrock for legal thought across Europe and beyond. Principles like innocent until proven guilty, a concept we hold dear today, were meticulously developed by Roman jurists. They also pioneered the idea of a universal law that applies to all people, known as ius gentium, distinct from the specific laws of Rome itself, fostering a sense of shared legal principles. Their careful development of property rights, contract law, and the intricate workings of legal procedures provided a robust framework for society and commerce. The very distinction between public and private law, and the pursuit of equity, fairness in individual cases, are all legacies of Roman legal thought. These systematic approaches were later codified, most notably in the Eastern Empire with Justinian's Code, which then became a foundational text rediscovered and studied with renewed vigor in the West during the Renaissance, fueling the development of modern European civil law. The careful administration of vast provinces, the detailed record-keeping that allowed for effective governance, and the very concept of a professional, merit-based bureaucracy were all Roman innovations that later states, centuries after the Western Empire, would eagerly adapt and adopt. Rome truly taught the world how to organize, how to administer complex societies, and how to create a framework for peace and order through a consistent, evolving rule of law. The quiet, logical progression of a court case, the formal language of legal documents, and the enduring idea of justice for all, still carry the distinct echoes of Roman legal thought. The Latin language stands as another profoundly living and breathing legacy. Though no longer a spoken language of daily life, Latin is the proud and direct mother of the Romance languages: French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. These vibrant languages, spoken by hundreds of millions of people across continents today, are direct descendants, carrying Latin's grammatical structures, its core vocabulary, and its lyrical cadences. Furthermore, a truly significant portion of the English language, though Germanic in its roots, is vastly enriched by Latin words and concepts, particularly in fields like law, medicine, science, theology, and philosophy. When we speak of justice, civic, military, empire, education, liberty, or countless other fundamental words, we are quietly, perhaps unknowingly, using the direct linguistic legacy of Rome. Beyond everyday speech, Latin remained the universal language of scholarship, science, philosophy, and the Church throughout the entire European Middle Ages and well into the early modern period, acting as a crucial, unifying bridge for the transmission of knowledge and intellectual inquiry. The quiet murmur of Latin prayers in ancient churches, the careful study of classical Roman texts in university halls, and the very structure of our scientific names for plants and animals all speak of Latin's enduring, pervasive presence. Roman literature itself, from Virgil's epic Aeneid which shaped national identities, to Horace's poetry, Cicero's eloquent speeches, and Livy's grand histories, provided timeless models for later European writers and thinkers. Rome's mastery of engineering and architecture continues to inspire and serve as a tangible, monumental reminder of its practical genius and dedication to public welfare. The vast network of Roman roads, though many have long since vanished beneath modern pavement, laid the literal and conceptual foundations for transportation routes across Europe. Their remarkable bridges, ingenious aqueducts that brought fresh water to cities, and magnificent structures like the mighty Colosseum or the serene Pantheon demonstrate a profound understanding of materials, scale, and construction techniques, particularly the revolutionary use of concrete, which allowed for unparalleled structural freedom. The arch and the dome, key architectural elements perfected by the Romans, allowed for grand, open spaces and impressive feats of construction that influenced subsequent architectural styles for millennia, from Romanesque cathedrals to neoclassical government buildings. Even in our bustling modern cities, the fundamental principles of urban planning, sophisticated sanitation systems, and reliable public water supply systems can directly trace their roots back to Roman ingenuity. We walk on pavements, utilize complex public water networks, and admire public buildings that subtly echo Roman design principles, often without consciously realizing their ancient lineage. Perhaps one of the most transformative and truly enduring legacies is the spread of Christianity. While Christianity began its journey in the Middle East, it was within the organizational and communicative framework of the Roman Empire that it grew, formalized its structure, and spread across vast distances. Christian missionaries utilized Roman roads, navigated Roman trade routes, and communicated within the common linguistic and administrative zones of the empire. The Roman Empire, despite periods of intense persecution, ultimately provided the necessary infrastructure and cultural context within which Christianity became the dominant religion of Europe. The early Christian Church itself adopted many Roman organizational principles, such as the division into dioceses and a clear hierarchical structure: bishops, archbishops, patriarchs, allowing it to become a remarkably resilient and enduring institution. After the fall of the West, the Christian Church, particularly the Bishop of Rome, who would become the Pope, became a crucial source of continuity and authority, preserving what learning it could, providing much-needed social order, and shaping the spiritual and moral landscape of medieval Europe for centuries. The very rhythm of Sunday services, the organization of a local parish, and the enduring ethical framework of Western thought all bear the indelible mark of Roman Christianity. Finally, and perhaps most powerfully, the very idea of Rome itself has left an indelible imprint on human imagination and political thought. Rome became a powerful, almost mythical and enduring symbol of order, law, civilization, universal empire, and lasting accomplishment. Throughout history, countless subsequent leaders and states, from Charlemagne's attempt to revive an empire with his Holy Roman Empire to Napoleon's vast ambitions, and even modern political discourse around concepts like republicanism or civic virtue, have consciously or unconsciously looked back to Rome as an ideal, a model of power, stability, and unparalleled cultural achievement. The core concepts of empire, republic, senate, and citizenship continue to resonate deeply in political discourse worldwide. The grandeur, the discipline, the artistic achievements, and the sheer longevity of Rome continue to fascinate, educate, and inspire. It is a story that speaks to the highest aspirations of human civilization and the constant, complex challenges of maintaining order amidst inevitable change. As we bring our long narrative to its contemplative close, let us embrace the profound understanding that the Roman Empire did not simply fall in 476 CE. Instead, its transformation was a complex, multifaceted, and protracted process that allowed its most vital elements to endure, adapt, and evolve. The story of Rome is not one of a dramatic, conclusive ending, but of a profound metamorphosis, where old forms dissolved into new ones, scattering their enduring essence across the vast landscape of time and influence. Traces of Rome are truly all around us, in the very words we speak, the laws we follow, the magnificent buildings we admire, and the foundational ideas we contemplate. The quiet strength, the pragmatic genius, and the enduring legacy of Rome continue to resonate, a permanent, powerful echo in the vast, unfolding tapestry of human history. Our understanding of the past is immeasurably richer for having listened to these ancient voices, and our present, undeniably, is deeply shaped by their timeless wisdom. Thanks for joining me tonight. If you are still listening, it would mean a lot if you could like and subscribe because these videos take a long time to make. Thank you.